This is an idea that you and I see slightly differently. I don't know that it matters though. It's like, as long as you have the frame of reference that allows you to get to the other side, it's interesting. But for me, it's, again, just like yours is based on your experience, mine is based on mine, I have found that the lessons do not come automatically, that if I don't pay attention and find the lesson and remind myself, because the way that I remind myself is, no matter how badly I fail, that I can learn from this, and that if I learn enough, that knowledge will stack and I'll be able to succeed in a way. So my thing is, on a long enough timeline, I can be anyone at anything. Now, I don't believe that literally, but it's so close to true that I'm like, it will keep moving me forward. But I always have the fear that the things that are happening could very easily make things worse. And it's really interesting that as I get older, I think about this a lot. Like, part of my anxiety has always been around, I've grown more anxious as I've become more self-aware. And the reason that I become more anxious as I become more self-aware is I realize that there are real stakes. And I made a series of decisions, for instance, that grew my business and allowed me to sell it for $1 billion. Had I made the wrong decisions, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And I've been in legal battles. And if you make the wrong decision, it goes one way. If you make the right decision, it goes another. And so there are moments in life that really are ultra high stakes. And you have to pay attention and you have to get it right. And a certain level of anxiety is useful. But then there becomes a point where it's too much anxiety.
Right.
And now that becomes detrimental. And that becomes the very reason that you're making mistakes. So it's like this really fascinating, nuanced thing of recognizing the lesson will not take care of itself. I must get in there, get in the messy middle, figure it out. And I soothe myself by knowing that, there's a Jim Carrey quote that I'm paraphrasing, but he said, these people came to me one night at the comedy store. And they said, hey, Jim, there's a big casting agent. They're in the audience. This is your one chance. Do not blow it. And he went out and he blew it. And he came back and everyone's like, oh my God, like this was your one shot. And he was like, let me tell you this right now. Until you've blown your one shot 5 times, he's like, you haven't even started yet. And so I was like, wow, that's really powerful to remember that it's gonna seem like you've only got this one shot, but really you've got a lot. But there are real consequences.
See, but here's the thing. There are real consequences, but see, I think you're always playing a high stakes game. You can't help yourself. It's in your DNA. And you're not somebody that's gonna make a stupid decision.
I know I am.
No, you're not.
I'm not going to knowingly make a stupid decision. But I've made so many stupid decisions.
But were they?
So, yeah, 100%. So I'll give you an example.
Okay.
So NFTs.
Yes.
A roadmap was a mistake. And a roadmap led me to 120 hours a week for 8 months.
Okay.
To the point where people are like, there's no way you were working 120 hours. Oh, I can tell you. I can run the math. So it was 120 hours. It was so dumb. I was losing sleep. It was fucking nightmarish. And as I got into it, I realized what the mistake was, but I didn't know enough to avoid the mistake. Now, I'm very glad that I took action and I did it and I built it and it's all gonna be fine in the end.
Right.
But it put me through 8 months of not fun. It was brutal and unenjoyable and taxing on my marriage.
Yeah.
So I would not repeat it. And if I wasn't able to say, that was a fucking mistake, don't do it again, I'm likely to repeat the mistake.
Okay, so here's the way I would frame that. That it had to be that painful because you were a stubborn motherfucker and you would have not gotten the lesson but for it being that painful. And I only say that because, like I often wonder, why is this happening to me? Like here's the things I can talk about. During the pandemic, between like the talk show and the speaking business coming to a freeze and being responsible for payroll, being the victim of wire fraud, having a bunch of stuff go down with people that betrayed me and stole from me and lied to me and on and on and on. I'm like, I can't take one more fucking thing.
Yep.
But there was a singular lesson that I was too stubborn, too busy, too whatever, that I could then see backwards, oh shit, life's been trying to teach me this for a while. And what it was trying to teach me is, number one, you have to stop being everybody's friends and you've got to start thinking like a fucking CEO. You are not people's mother. You are a CEO, Mel.
Technically, you are.
Well,
3 people's mother.
3. But I was bringing that into business.
Yep.
2, because I'm not chasing celebrity or not, I don't view myself as this person with this like massive list of accomplishments. I just view myself as somebody who's sharing the stuff that I'm learning because I want to help you avoid the painful heartbreak mistakes that I made because I didn't know any better. That to me is what drives me. If I can help you accelerate your success or shrink the amount of pain that you feel, I have won the game of life for me personally, and I feel deeply fulfilled. But I was not being responsible about the platform that I had built. And I was not being responsible about getting systems and process in place. And the more successful I became, it was interesting. You and I, I started to have less and less and less to be able to complain about. And so it got pointed right back at me. And the biggest wake-up call that I got when everything started to implode over the last 2 years was somebody said to me, Mel, the more successful you become, the more miserable you are. And
were they saying that about you specifically?
Yes.
Or they're just saying in general?
Yeah, about me specifically. It's like, I've known you for 8 years and you're just, like what you were talking about, Tom. You're stressed out. You work all the time. Whenever we check in, you tend to focus on the things that aren't working. And that tells me that nothing's working. And the reason why everything's breaking is because it's supposed to. And there are major mistakes that you're making about how you're approaching things, who you've surrounded yourself with, the way that you're showing up. And life is breaking things because you're not supposed to continue building on this messy foundation. And when I look backwards, Tom, just like you kind of look backwards, you can probably see, I wish I would have made it. I would have saved myself that heartache. I didn't know any better. And clearly, I am the kind of person that, whether it's because I move so fast or I'm distracted or whatever it may be, I need a sledgehammer to change directions. And I have now committed in this next phase of my life to change a lot of the patterns that weren't making me happy. And so when you and I saw each other today and you asked how I was doing, I mean it. Like, I am starting to have a breakthrough in happiness and being content. And I'm realizing, and this makes me very sad to say, I'm not sure I ever really knew what happiness feels like as a baseline. Like, I feel like I'm the kind of person that I've experienced a lot of joy. I've laughed a lot. I've had some fun. I've got tremendous amount of memories. I'm a good person. But in terms of having a sense of contentment and peace and being able to just be in the moment and enjoy where I am, I have never experienced that as sort of a way of being.
What was the breakthrough?
Well, I think it was probably 2 years of a lot of things breaking apart. It was the fact that during COVID, especially during quarantine, I couldn't go anywhere. And it made me confront the fact that I was regulating any uncomfortable feeling by being busy. And, there's some interesting things that I've been really unpacking about anxiety. And it relates to this. So I started to see that the way I had been doing things, not sustainable. I also, being home, I had this feeling of deep sadness because all of our kids were home, and I realized, oh my God, I missed out on our daughter's high school. And I'm about to miss out on Oakley's high school experience because I am so buried in work and I'm chasing the next speech or the next plan or writing this book that I'm not present in my life. And the other thing that started to happen is because I couldn't reach for the coping mechanism of running to Target or running to meet a friend or running to catch a plane, I was forced to sit with myself. And I started to realize that my experience in my body and in my mind is one where I feel like a race car that is sitting at a stoplight and the light turns at green. and one foot's on the brake and the other one's revving the engine. And that there is this experience that I have lived with forever of feeling just like the engine is revving and something's wrong. And I know it comes from childhood. I know that it comes from the fact that, I had a mom that had me when she was 19 and she dropped out of college. My parents are still together 54 years later.
Wow.
And she was a teen mom. She was halfway across the country from, the large family farm, and it must have been horrible. And she was alone. And my dad's starting medical school, and they were financially had nothing. And she was an unplanned pregnancy, and they got married like that summer after she dropped out of school. And I believe that my mom's stress at that time is something that I absorbed. And I'm not blaming it on her. I'm talking about the science here of how 0 to 5, particularly in those years where you're not verbal, you have experiences as a kid where you're not a match with your parents. And by not a match, I mean that what you need as a kid is not a match for the way in which your parent shows up. I am sure I am not a match for all 3 of my kids all the time. That maybe there's a moment where one of my kids really needs me to be soft and loving and kind and just hold them. And I'm talking and doing solutions. That means you're not a match. And what happens from 0 to 5 is that because your survival depends on attachment, when there's not that match emotionally, for whatever reason, your parents aren't present, they're dealing with their own shit, they never got it themselves, or a lot of times, there's just those of us that need a lot of love. And you have a parent that only has so much to give. There's this famous I think it was T.D. Jakes example, where he was talking to Oprah and he said, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but he was explaining to her, look, you're just like a 10-gallon person. You need 10 gallons of love. And maybe your mom had this much to give. And so there can be a mismatch because when a parent gives you everything they have to give, but it's only a drop in the bucket for what you actually need because you're a unique individual, you feel threatened. You feel unsafe. You feel separate. And so I've recently learned from Dr. Russell Kennedy, you should have him on, it's fascinating, that all anxiety starts from an experience of being separate from your parents as a child. And that when you're separate from your parents, there's an alarm that goes off. And that's what we call anxiety as adults. And so when you have an experience as an adult, a lot of us, and I for years, thought about anxiety as something that was like an alarm bell. Something's wrong, go fix it. That's where all the doing comes in. My busyness, Tom, was my attempt to outrun the alarm. My busyness, my overachieving, my drive, it was all like a coping mechanism for something going on in the background all the time. And anytime I would be in a situation where I felt separate, which was often, I've often had the experience of feeling like I'm on the outside looking in, that alarm is going off. And so I dive into work. A lot of people silence the alarm. My husband did this by smoking weed every day. Makes the alarm feel a little bit more quiet. People do it with drinking. They do it with porn, with all kinds of addictions. And so I developed this addiction to being busy and to constantly being in my head, worrying about things. It's its own form of addiction. And so during the pandemic, when things got really quiet and I couldn't reach for my normal coping mechanisms, I just started feeling like I was having a mental breakdown.
Whoa.
And I got very serious about really going inward and figuring out what is actually going on here.
You journaling, you meditating, what is going inward?
I'm a marriage therapist. I tracked down a therapist that works only with women around these sort of attachment issues. I did EMDR sessions, the eye movement stuff. Yep. My husband and I did several MDMA therapy sessions that were guided, that were just revolutionary, life-changing. And I started to experience something that I've talked about for years, but I have never been still enough to truly put into practice. And that is that most of us treat mental health issues by going from what I would say the neck up. I wish there was a different word than mental health. I really do, because mental health makes you think it's up here. any issue that you have, Tom, that relates to the way that you think or physiological changes in your body or like on edge, anxiety, all that shit, it's all in your body. Your body has stored experience.
Your body and mind, or just
They're
your
all
body?
connected. But your body, so let's go neck down. Neck down is where the money is, people. Neck down is where the healing is. Neck down. You want to make more money, you want to be confident, you want to be more content, happy, all this stuff. Let's talk about the neck down. We spend a ton of time talking about really useful things in the toolkit, like meditating, like managing your thoughts, interrupting your thoughts, changing the channel, working on mindset. That gets you so far. And yes, those things have a benefit in terms of what happens in your body. Like we know, based on all the extraordinary research around meditating, what the physiological effect is, what the chemical effect is, the effect on stress. But I am a living example that if you start to attack any mental health issue or any mindset issue from the neck down, holy shit, Tom.
Talk to me about how you do that.
So, how you do it, first of all, is by understanding a simple fact. You feel before you think. And so, because all the experiences in your childhood are stored and remembered in your body, your nervous system, your gut, your heart, like all this stuff, it's all interconnected. I mean, when you and I were in utero, the same embryonic clump that forms the brain, as you know, you talk about it on the show, is connected to the gut. It's the same glob of stuff. I know this is not technical. I'm not a doctor. And
Glob is pretty
technical. And then like when you pull it apart, like that stuff, that goop that kids play with, and that stringy shit connects it to, those are the neurotransmitters and the thing called the vagus nerve that literally act like a super highway from your gut to your brain. That your nervous system isn't, we think of the nervous system, and I don't know about you, but I think about like, the wires in your body and all that stuff. It's more than that. It's your gut, it's your heart, it's how everything's all connected. Yeah. It's all of it.
Stuff is hopelessly complicated. For people that don't know, the enteric nervous system, so from your esophagus to your anus, actually has as many neurons, literal brain neurons, as a cat brain. So when you think about having a personality, like think about how much a cat does and how specific they can be and how much personality they have and how one is different than another, it's really crazy. And then if you magnify that 1,000-fold by taking in all the bacteria and fungus and viruses and all that live in your microbiome, it gets crazy. When I heard that 70% of your serotonin is stored in the gut, that's when I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Yeah, so, it's true. Yeah, it's crazy. Balanced gut is everything. And so and so when you start to understand, wait a minute, like there's all these physical sensations that we have that are stored experiences. And those physical sensations send an alert to your brain. And then your brain starts scanning and trying to interpret the signal that your body is sending it. So I'll give you a simple example. So I walked into a trunk show that a woman was hosting in this new community that we live in. And amazing group of women. Invited me to come over to look at this dress line that a woman had just launched. So supporting a female entrepreneur, meeting all these other cool women that have moved to this small town. And I walk in and I immediately feel the alarm go off. And it may surprise you because I seem to be a very outgoing person. But the truth is I was kind of shy as a kid. And I'm not a big group person. I'm a really like one-on-one kind of person. Big parties are not my scene. I was never the big girl gang kind of person. And I love having lots of friends, but I'm way more comfortable in smaller settings. And so I feel this alarm go off. And I've just, been immersed for the last year and a half in my own healing. And so I go, oh, interesting. I wonder why this is going off. And I walk in, and I'm greeted by, a wonderful group of probably 9 women. And right after I hug everybody and I start to look around, I realize they all start talking again. And they all have kids the same age. They've known each other for a couple of years. And I have that immediate feeling of being separate. And I go, oh, that's what this is. That's exactly what Dr. Kennedy was talking about. This is an experience that is super subtle where this alarm goes off. Now, the old Mel would have been like, oh my God, I shouldn't have moved to this town. I'm never going to make friends with people. This is a horrible decision, aiming it right back at me. immediately interpreting the alarm like something's wrong. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, when back in the day when there were saber-toothed tigers, the alarm going off inside your body meant there was something wrong. So now that I know that this is just a stored experience in moments where the little Mel felt alone, I now know that the fastest way to flip the switch is to like literally just put my hand right here and be like, you're okay. Like just give myself the reassurance that I didn't get in whatever moment my body's remembering from childhood. And literally the alarm disappears. And so when you start to become very self-aware about your body, and when you go on edge or when you freeze or when you feel that withdrawal, all you have to do is give yourself a little reassurance and love in that moment, because that's all that it is. Anxiety is from the little you. And it is waving a flag to say, hey, turn inward and give me a hug or do whatever. He's got this great exercise where you can take a towel and just go like this. And it's almost like giving yourself a hug. And I will tell you, Tom, absolute game changer. Because instead of doing what I have done for 52 years, which is I feel something's wrong and I go upstairs and then I try to manage the psycho thoughts that are going on, I just go right into my body and cut it off at the pass. And when your mind doesn't get involved and doesn't start interpreting all of the signaling in your body, it passes within what's the research says like 90 seconds, but when you get really good at it, it passes like that. So things like cold exposure. So we have an ice barrel and we've got this other cold plunge thing that Joel Marin just sent to me as a gift, our buddy. I do that like several times a week. The other thing that I do is I always exercise every day, whether it's taking the dog for a walk. I get outside first thing in the morning. I do all kinds of breathing techniques, whether it's like I just learned a new one where you take in 2 nose breaths and then it seems dumb and you look really stupid doing it.
Breathing stuff's
But
so effective.
dude, it is like the exhale is the important part. Because when you breathe in through your nose like that, it shuts off your brain thinking. You cannot do that and think about something. Like try to do a math problem while you're going, you can't do it. And then blow out through your teeth closed. And the longer the exhale, the better, because it's on the exhale that you are learning and signaling to your body that you're in control in this moment. I get a lot of questions from listeners who, because of the things that have happened in their past,
Yeah.
they don't know how to trust their intuition.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of questions about decision making and how to truly, in a situation like this, where you are burning through your entire life savings,
Yeah.
you have left your dream job, you have gotten no after no after no after no after no. How do you stay connected to your intuition in a situation like that?
Mm-hmm.
What tool do you have or what advice can you give to somebody who's having trouble hearing what the right decision is in that kind of situation?
Yeah. So I think that intuition is like a muscle that we build over time. And I think it's a lifelong journey that, to really learning how to hear it and to trust it. And one of the greatest tools I think is to think back to times in your life where maybe you had this gut feeling to do something and everyone around you said, don't do it. So you listen to them, you didn't trust yourself, and then think about what happened. Right. And then similarly, go back to a time where everyone was like, oh, no way, no way. And you're like, but I love him. I don't think he's lying. I think his phone really did break 5 times every weekend. He didn't disappear his phone. Like, right. Think about like that situation when everyone was telling you something and you didn't listen, or even your gut was telling you, right? And you didn't listen, and you think back to those times and you start to develop pattern recognition of how it felt in moments in your life when you trusted yourself or didn't, and what happened, and you get better attuned to what that feels like. So
What does it feel like for you in both situations? Like, can you describe what it feels like for you when you're like, yep, no, that's a no? And what
yes.
does it feel like for you when you're like, I'm sticking with this?
Yeah. often it's the tiniest of feelings in my gut, right? Some people describe it as like a still small voice. I pray about it. I ask God to give me the answers and I try to live the answers.
Do you feel the answers that God gives you? Like, is that what happens for you when you do this?
Like right now, when I look at you, right?
Yeah.
Like I know you're a beautiful soul, right? I just know it. You know it. You feel it. Like I feel like you have good, like you're good. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
feeling, right? And we get these feelings, but so much around us is so loud. You know, and we just learn over time. And by the way, not to go, this could be a whole other episode, but especially as women from the time we're young, we learn not to trust ourselves. We walk in to our parents fighting and we go, is everything okay? They're like, everything's great. Everything is great, right? To protect us, we start to learn to
You're
doubt
like,
ourselves.
baloney.
Right?
Yep.
But you know, or, you know, especially as young girls, you learn to make decisions by consensus often with your friends
Or
and you
making other people happy.
making other people happy. People pleasing. We're rewarded for pleasing everyone else and almost ignoring what we feel. So if you're someone who's an adult right now going, I don't even know how to hear my own gut or trust myself. That's why we've been trained out of learning how to do it, right? So it takes intentionality and really deciding, oh, you know what? I'm going to put in some time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, just to thinking about moments in my life where I trusted myself, where I didn't. And if you don't remember any of them, start now.
You know what you just inspired me to think about? I don't even know if it's possible to do this. But imagine if you could go through the rest of today and only make decisions that align with what you truly want. If you
Yes.
don't want to go to that party tonight, don't go. If a friend asks you something and you feel obligated out of guilt to lend them that thing, don't actually lend them the thing.
Yeah.
Eat what you want to eat tonight for dinner. Don't just go to wherever your friends want to go. Like, I think that would be a real eye-opening experiment if you were to do that.
And you start building that muscle, right? And the more you do that, some people don't even pay attention to what they actually want to eat for dinner. They're just like, what sounds good to everyone? But to your point, when you start paying attention, then you also start building that knowing of hearing your own knowing.
Do you think it's possible to discover your unique purpose in life if you are not connected and listening to your intention and intuition, I mean?
And your own intuition. Here's how I think I think it's way more likely and you're going to actually discover more than one purpose often if you're really tuned in to your intuition and you're intentional about it. But what I'll say for someone who feels like they can't hear their gut but they still want to find their purpose, a friend of mine, Rory Vaden, says that you're best positioned to serve the person you once were, right? Trent Shelton, our friend, says one day the things you're going through right now will be the things you made it through.
Yeah.
And what I would say to someone listening right now is look at something in the past that has broken your heart, that has caused you grief, that has been something that you care deeply about, whether it's positive or negative, that you've gone through, something you care deeply about, or maybe pain you've gone through, something you have made it through. I believe often when we go through the hardest times in our life,
Yep.
it's for one of two reasons.
What are they?
It is to either equip us with the strength we need to carry the weight of our success that's to come, to carry the weight of our purpose that's to come, or we've gone through these horrible, unspeakable times, things we would never want to happen to us again in our life, because we're actually going to get our greatest source of fulfillment and purpose by one day helping someone else who's going through them. And
I love that saying that you're best equipped to help the person you used to be.
yes, yes.
The first recession just rocked my life to rock bottom. And when rock bottom hits, you don't have to hit with a thud. Oftentimes when you hit bottom, you bounce. And that's where I think the power is, that you when the world feels upside down, you always have the power to make it right. When one chapter ends, you always have the power to write a new one. When, you know, you feel like nobody loves you, you have the power to learn how to love yourself. And if there's one thing that COVID-19 has done, regardless of whatever devastation it has caused in your life, is it has forced us all to experience the great pause. And I read that in a Medium article, and I loved that idea of a pause, because I think in 2020, our lives have gotten so fast and so digital. And when you are forced to pause and get present and to slow down, you are reminded of what's actually important. And what's important is your health. What's important is your family and your friends. What's important is whether or not you are taking care of yourself and thinking positive thoughts versus negative thoughts. The world gave us a gigantic experiment where we got to practice and get to continue to practice the most important skill on the planet, which is emotional resilience, the ability to face hard and actually be okay, the ability to face the uncertain and redirect your attention on things that you know that are certain. And so I am so grateful that we had this time, because when I think about my family, so we've got a 21-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 15-year-old, we will never get these 10 weeks back again. It was a gift. As much as our two daughters who are in college were complete when they got home, it was a gift.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for that generation, by the way, for them to learn, the generation where everybody gets a trophy, that the things that you love can be taken away like that. That there are things in life that are way more important than your prom or rush
Or graduation
or graduation. Not to say that you don't deserve to mourn those things, but the perspective check that you got from COVID-19, and, you know, it really hit home because one of our daughters has a very close friend in college whose dad died, who's my age. And no prior conditions, nothing. And I think when change hits and it's personal, that's when the perspective shift comes. And so between COVID-19 and the fight for social justice that we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the protesting going on, it's been a really remarkable moment of time if you pause for a minute and you reflect on the opportunity of this moment.
What is the opportunity?
The opportunity is to unlock the power that's inside you to create a better future for yourself, for your family, for your body, for your mind, for your spirit, for this country, for this world, for your community.
Yeah. I always talk about, since I experience many breakdowns, whether it be a physical breakdown or relationship breakdown or family breakdowns, I feel like in order for us to really see clearly, we need to break down in a big way. It's hard to make big changes when things are good or when they're so. It's even when it's like, it's not good, it's hard to make changes. It needs to be devastatingly challenging for a lot of us. Some of us maybe can make changes all the time, but for most people, there needs to be some devastation or near devastation, either personally or close to you, to say, oh, let me reevaluate, let me pause, like you talked about, and start creating a better future for myself. Why do you think that is in human beings, that, you know, if things are going bad, we won't change? If they're going good, we won't change, but it's almost like we need a massive breakdown, near-death experience, divorce, COVID, for us to see clearly to start changing?
Well, there's a really simple answer: patterns. So the thing about all human beings is that we are pattern learning machines. And if you feel stuck or broken, I guarantee you, while you feel that way, you're not. You have a pattern of behavior or a pattern of thinking that is broken. And we need to be disrupted because we love our patterns. And even people that I know, like
even when we're in pain, even when we're in pain, we love the pain.
Pain's familiar for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like you may be listening to Lewis and I talking, and you grew up in a super chaotic household. Maybe your parents argued all the time. Maybe your dad or mom were in and out. Maybe there was a lot of fighting. Maybe there was actual abuse. I don't know what was going on, but it was chaotic as hell. And so as an adult, you have vowed to yourself, you are not going to repeat that pattern. But what ends up happening is because as a little kid, you absorbed the pattern of chaos in your nervous system, unless you go about the intentional work of breaking the pattern of chaos, you will create it in your own life because it's what's familiar. You won't understand. Why do I keep dating these assholes? Why do I go to these bosses that treat me like crap? Because you don't know what it feels like to be in a relationship with either a boss or a romantic partner or a roommate that is consistent, because for the first 18 years of your life, you lived in a state called, when's the next shoe going to drop?
Right.
And so wherever it is in your life that something is broken, there is a pattern that you don't see yet that is making you continue to stay in a broken situation. And so one of the things that you just asked, which is why is a perspective change or losing a job or something like that that's so disruptive? Because those sorts of things, COVID-19 breaks every pattern.
Yes.
Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
Yes. Black Lives Matter breaks patterns of thinking that you weren't even aware that you had about privilege or being anti-racist or what your Black colleagues and friends and relatives deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so having a breakdown is one of the biggest things on the planet, because what you get is you get a break from your own bullshit, and you can look objectively at where you are, and for the first time look ahead and say, well, what do I want to go create? And 9 times out of 10, if you're discouraged right now, if you've got financial devastation, if you're facing something that is making this moment in time as hard for you as life was for Lewis and I in 2008 during the last recession, I beg you, ask yourself honestly if what you had is actually what you wanted. The thing that you just lost, that job that you bitched about all the time,
that relationship that was bad to you. Yeah.
Yes. Or the friends you can't hang out with because it's convenient and you're in quarantine. Like, actually ask yourself if this is what you wanted, or were you just used to it? Being used to something, Lewis, I think is the biggest reason why people don't change. I asked my mother, I love my mother. I love my parents. They've been married 51 years. Which is a feat because my mom was a teen mom. But I asked her once if she'd go to a personal development seminar with me.
What'd you say?
Are you kidding me? Why would I want to change at my age?
Oh, wow.
I might discover I hate my life.
Wow.
I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave that right there.
Right. I mean,
I think being used to what you have. I mean, I even our son is, so I'm here in Vermont at my mother-in-law's place, and our son is going to go to high school in Vermont. And so we're going to kind of split our time back and forth between my mother-in-law's place and our place in Boston, because God knows what business is going to be like. And, why would you need an office after COVID-19? Right. Another amazing thing to realize, even that change, I notice my own agitation, my own anxiety coming up. Will I make friends? Will I like a slower lifestyle? What happens if Chris likes it up here and I hate it up here? My own mind, because it's not something I'm used to yet, is making up stories to cling to the old way of life. This is a moment in time, everyone, please. This is the greatest gift. The greatest gift is this moment of pause where you get in touch with what you actually want. What's your name?
Delaney.
Hi, Delaney.
Hi. I wanted to start off by saying I listened to your segment with Alex, to those feeling lost in your 20s.
Oh, yeah, she's talking about call her daddy.
You can't call me out like that at work.
Yes, you can. Girl, that is the #1 female-hosted podcast in the world.
Yeah. But I wanted to say, you said earlier in terms of the 5-second rule, the easiest part is knowing what you need to do. I feel like I've been a little overwhelmed lately. What would you say, or the biggest piece of advice when you don't know what you need to do before you save 5 seconds?
Are you talking about work, or are you talking about life in general, or?
I think all of the above, right?
Okay, great question. How many can relate to this? Excellent. Okay, so when it comes to work, a really great habit to get into, especially as y'all are making this big turn, is try to have a quick alignment meeting with the person you report to every Monday. And just go over what's on your plate and recheck in about what are the strategic objectives for this week so that you're aligned with what the person who you're reporting to. Because I'll give everybody the super simple secret other than visibility for being a rock star at work. Make your boss's life easier. Literally, you make the person that you report to's life easier because you're getting stuff done and you're solving problems. And here's the most important thing, you're communicating about what's getting done. You literally are a superstar because your boss is just as overwhelmed as you are. And so if you just touch base, even if you can't get a meeting and you send the 17 things on your plate and you say, I'm a little overwhelmed, I just want to make sure that I know what the priority is this week. Because it is changing all the time because they're responding as much as you are. That's number one. Number two, at the end of the week on Fridays, send a short email saying this got done, this got done, this got done, this got done, this got done. And here are the things I'm going to need your help with on Monday. You keep somebody in the loop like that, they will help you create rails that keep you very focused and feeling more sure about what you're working on, okay? So that's number one, ask for help. Do not try to figure that out on your own. Number two, when it comes to feeling lost in life and overwhelmed in life, always go back to your morning routine. Always go back to your morning routine. And there are 2 rules that I have for my morning routine. Everybody hates them. Nobody follows them. It changes your life. Number one, do not sleep with your phone. Do not sleep with your phone. And the reason why I say do not sleep with your phone is because we're all addicted to it. If you were addicted to cocaine or alcohol, you wouldn't put it on your bedside table. But, you literally go to bed, and then before you're even out of bed, you literally doing this. And you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And like, if you're laying in bed reading work emails or looking at Facebook, you literally just let your boss, sorry, Tia, and all of your friends on Facebook walk in your bedroom. And more importantly, you let the world hijack your mind. So before you're even vertical, you are stressed out, overwhelmed. That one change, which you're not going to want to do, will solve the problem of overwhelm. And here's what I do. I plug my phone into the bathroom every night because it solves 2 problems. Number one, when that alarm goes off, now I'm really screwed because it's not next to me. So I have to get out of bed. Number 2, the phone's not there. So as I wake up and I walk to the bathroom, I'm so mad at myself. But by the time I get to the bathroom, I'm now awake enough that I can turn the alarm off and flip the phone over. I don't pick it up. I don't do it. Even if I post things in the morning, I do that after I take 30 minutes for myself. What do I do in those 30 minutes? Well, I do all the stuff that you know that makes you feel better. I literally journal for a second. I move my body. This is a life changer. If you literally just work out for 10 minutes in the morning, it can be enough. I eat something healthy. I have a cup of coffee. I set my intention for the day. I think about the one thing I want to make progress on. And only then do I then pick up that phone. Then I let the world in. And by getting myself right with myself and setting myself up and giving myself 30 lousy freaking minutes to start the day, to clear my head, to think about what I want out of the day, to take care of myself just a little bit, now I'm in a better place. Now I'm able to do it. And then there's one more exercise. It's kind of a spin on the person you want to be. So my daughter's 23 and had a really rough time with COVID. The last 2 years of her college imploded because of COVID. And she left college basically depressed, really unhealthy, drinking way too much, and she had a meltdown. And so she said, I sat down with her and my husband, and we just were talking with her, and I said, here's what I want you to do. If you ever feel overwhelmed or lost, I want you to draw a line down the center of a paper, and I want you to think back, when was a moment in my life where I felt happy, and I felt like I was happy about where my life was headed? And so my daughter said, senior year in high school. And I said, great, what were you doing then? What was life like then? She's like, well, I was getting up early. I was going to school. I saw my friends every day. I was playing lacrosse, so I exercised 6 days a week. I was only drinking 2 nights a week. I had something to look forward to. I'm like, great. Now let's write down what your life looks like right now. Oh, I'm sleeping till noon. My friends have all left and started their lives. I drink every day. I'm not exercising. I'm like, great. Compare the lists. You are wired for happiness. You're wired for clarity. You are wired for success. It's why you miss it when you don't have it. You can only miss something you know. The answers are in there. And so, like we've said with a lot of the things, even though it's overwhelming, there are ways, simple ways that you can solve this. Go to your boss, start getting aligned, get direction, and then do what they tell you to do. That'll give you the structure right there. Ask for help always. Second thing is, go inside and take a look at what your habits looked like and your days looked like when you felt a little bit more in control, when you felt like yourself, and then compare with what you're doing now. Come back to your morning routine, and you will set yourself up to have a day that feels like you're in control, and that'll change everything. That was a great question. Hi, you did it.
Yes.
You did it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My friend group, we're big fans.
Awesome.
Especially we're transitioning just out of college right now. So, yeah, your podcast with Alex was great timing for me.
What did you get out of that conversation that I had with Alex?
I got, especially the relationship one. I don't know how you said it, but kind of, I need to fix who I am first, because like a relationship's kind of like a mirror of what you're feeling in a way.
Even worse, a relationship amplifies what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So if you go after that person and you're feeling insecure, and so you're chasing that person that's the hot guy, and if he only or she or da-da-da-da-da, even if the person ends up being with you, you're actually going to feel insecure because you didn't enter the relationship feeling good about yourself. So you're 1,000% right. Work on yourself first, because then you bring that to every relationship, and then the relationship is just additive to you versus amplifying the crap that you're trying to run from. And I only know that after really screwing things up in my 20s and 30s. Like, literally disaster. I would attach myself to people in order to prove that I was okay.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel worse about myself because I needed them to feel okay. So when the relationship broke up, I crumbled.
Yeah.
Coaching that I gave Heather is that a no is just a no. And that most successful people, the talented ones, it's people who continued to push forward despite the no's that they hear. And you're going to hear a lot of no's, a ton of no's. Do you understand? Most of us have Oprah on a vision board, or we really admire Oprah. You admire Oprah. I mean, who the hell doesn't? She's one of the most remarkable people on the planet. Do you know that when she started out her career, she was kicked out of the anchor chair at WJZ-TV in Baltimore after just a few months of landing that role? Do you know that Madonna, after dropping out of college, she took a job at Dunkin' Donuts, and she was fired because she got jelly on a customer? Or how about Bill Gates and Paul Allen, the co-founders of Microsoft? Do you know that they started a company called Trafo Data? Trafo Data. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, me neither. That's because it sucked. It was a gigantic no. But it led to something else. How about Katy Perry? Katy Perry, she sold more than 83 million singles and 6 million albums in the US alone. But it's been a long road to fame, people. Her first album was a failure, and she was dropped by Columbia Records. That's a gigantic no. Decca Records, they rejected the Beatles in 1962. I bet you they are really still regretting that if they're even in business. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Elvis Presley in 1954, he auditioned to sing at a club, and you know what he was told? That he was told he should stick to truck driving because he pretty much sucked as a singer. They told that to the king of rock and roll. And so I kind of feel like no's, whether you're getting rejected in the dating world, or you're getting rejected applying for jobs, or you're getting rejected as you talk to people about your business, or you're getting rejected by people that you are talking about your dreams with, okay? Tell me the last thing that you were rejected from. Tell me the last thing. What were you rejected from? I can tell you I did not get renewed at CNN after 4 years of working for them. That's a no, thank God, because I jumped right over to Audible Originals, and I would not be able to do a talk show if I was still under contract with CNN. Hallelujah. And so one of the things I want you to understand is that you have to reframe the no's that you've gotten. Every man or woman that has said no to you, that has rejected you, thank God, because that's not who you're supposed to be with. And if you're honest with yourself, when you look back at who you were in that relationship, you probably weren't the real you. And if you were the real you, the person said no because they're not a match for you. Terrific. You have to expect a no, because the right people are looking for you. The right people want to partner with you. The right people want to help you on your path to making your dreams come true. And so reframing no's and understanding that if you want to be successful, you're going to have to rack up a ton of no's. Not one, not two, not three, not four, not five. I would expect at least 23 no's in a row. That's what I would expect. And I think that expecting no's and knowing that you got to go for them, you got to rack up like 23 in a row before you find the treasure. It's life's way of testing you. It's life's way of seeing if you deserve it, if you want it enough, if you're willing to work for it, if you're willing to be yourself, even when you are being told over and over and over again that who you are is not a fit for this person or this company or this particular prospect. That's okay. Because every time that you're willing to show up and be yourself and still face the no, your confidence gets stronger, your intuition gets stronger, your courage gets stronger, and you earn karma. You earn the hard-won victories and the hard-won potential and the hard-won good credit because you're trying and you're showing up. Here's the thing that got me through kind of the loss of the talk show and the way that I think about things that I hope helps if you're listening and you're kind of struggling with something. I believe, and I went into the talk show saying this to myself because there's a 99% chance based on the history of people that have tried to have a daytime talk show that it was going to fail. And I went in there saying, I'm not doing this because I expect to have a successful talk show. I'm going to put 1,000% into it so that I have no regrets and I wouldn't change a thing. But I'm going into this because I know that there is a skill, a person, or an experience I am meant to have that will help me for the next chapter that I can't see coming. Mm-hmm. And the experience was, number one, meeting Mindy Borman, who is my executive producer, now my business partner and CEO. And it was also in working with a team of 130 people and finally being in the right seat on the bus, Lewis.
And not having to manage everything, but being in your lane.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And having a team and you not being the one doing everything. I know that feeling.
Well, it's not even that I was doing everything. It's that I didn't have anybody managing me.
Right. And so your mind is going to go into like opportunity, as opposed to focus mode. Right.
And so if you ever wonder why it feels like we're running in circles, it's because I'm the one leading us in circles. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a very hard thing to spot when you're in the middle of it.
Yep.
But when I got into a machinery that operated in a way where I was in the right seat on the bus, it was absolutely liberating. And that was the biggest gift of all. And then the third thing is, I think the daytime talk show and being face-to-face with your audience and having such a big daily audience, it was really amazing to be able to have an impact on a large number of people who feel forgotten because they're a little bit older if they're still watching TV. And a lot of the folks who are still watching TV at home during the daytime do not have the resources that you and I have, and may not have access to therapy or live in a community where it's stigmatized. And so having a platform that was reaching people that really appreciated this kind of content and also working with a really diverse range of experts, absolutely incredible. So I felt like I was organizing a killer dinner party conversation every day with real people's problems and the world's best experts. And so you kind of do a similar thing here on your podcast. So I know I want to continue to do that. but I'm in the middle of creating it. So if I
that's
said
great.
anything other than, I know it's events, I know it's more courses, I know it's collaborating with more people and getting outside my comfort zone. And I also know that as I set out to write down what I want to do, there's so much freaking fear that I have.
Why is that?
Because I still feel like I'm not worthy. I feel like I don't deserve it. Like it's old bullshit. And I think that's the other thing about patterns, everybody, is just because you identify. And for me as a kid, for whatever reason, I have my own version of feeling invisible and feeling like I'm not good enough. And so my way of coping, both with my anxiety and being a survivor of sexual abuse and wanting love, which we all need, is I was like an overachiever. And so I'm the kind of person that's super busy and a go-getter because it got me attention. And if I was the one that was super busy and achieving, I not only got praise, but it also insulates you from other people not picking you because you're the one in a leadership role doing the picking.
Right.
And so there's a part of me at the age of 51 that is realizing that, you know, these feelings of feeling unworthy and this hyper drive to try to achieve, it's all coming from a place of feeling inadequate or like what I'm doing is not enough. And
still,
so that's
at 50, having the talk show, having a best-selling book, having the Audible originals, having the platform everywhere, having the impact, it still don't feel, being the most booked female speaker in the world, like you still don't feel.
It's so stupid. It's annoying. And human beings are annoying. We are stuck with this wiring. Like if you think about it, like all of the crap you believe is probably a hangover from age 0 to 10. That as adults, we walk around thinking the same stuff we thought as kids. And I can't stand that I feel that way, but knowing it, it allows me to catch it before it stops me from having an event or writing that next book or taking a risk.
What do you think the biggest fear is? Because you say not worthy or not feeling enough. Is that?
I mean, it's just people liking me. I think like being a people pleaser.
Yeah, we're so similar in every way. It's crazy. It's great.
I want people to like me.
What happens if they don't like you?
It's lonely, dude.
What happens if
the problem
99%? What happens if 99% of people like you and 1% doesn't like you?
Oh, I don't give a shit about that.
Okay, but if it's like
honestly,
if it's 50-50,
I think that the work that we all have to do, every single one of us, whether you bulldoze, whether you people please, whether you avoid conflict, whether you're impulsive, whether you yo-yo your decisions, whatever it is that is your pattern, you know, the constant trashing yourself. I think the journey of your whole life is figuring out how to truly like and love yourself.
It's so true. I mean, I remember this was my whole life, was never loving myself and needing to go prove to others originally that I'm worthy. This was happening in sports and business until I started opening up and accepting myself and taking off the mask when I turned 30, talking about sexual abuse and just kind of saying, screw it. I don't care what people think about me anymore. This pain inside is hurting so much. It's not worth living with it. So I'm going to start sharing and allow myself to heal and allow myself to finally love myself. And it's so funny that we could just write a book with 2 words that says love yourself. And that's all the book needs to say, because a lot of us never remember to love ourselves, remember to acquire skills, which are important. Remember to love other people, remind ourselves to take care of our health. But if we don't love ourselves internally, if we don't think we can give ourselves a hug because we're not deserving of it, then none of this stuff is going to matter to the point of we're always going to need to do more to feel something.
Right.
It's
well,
crazy.
Nobody teaches you how to do it. And see, that's the thing. And, you know, I mean, if you look at human development, we're the only species that literally can't survive without another human being taking care of you. And so we are biologically hardwired to bond with other people. And that is from the very beginning of when you come out, bonding with somebody else and making sure they pay attention to you is your survival imperative. So you are born needing somebody else. And I think what ends up happening is there's never that kind of clean break or pass off between needing your parents to take care of you, needing your friends' approval to fit in, to truly having ownership over giving yourself what you didn't get, giving yourself what you needed. And that's the piece that I've been doing a lot of during the great pause, is slowing down, because so much of my busyness was fueled by, praise me, love me. Am I doing enough? Please tell me I'm doing okay. Okay, I can breathe now. I'm okay now. And when I slow down, and maybe it's a function of the anxiety, that's when things get scary, because that's when you've really got to be with yourself. And so it's in getting off the road, slowing down, recognizing that I'm super grateful for all the opportunity. And I know the work that I'm doing makes a tremendous impact. And I particularly love hearing from mental health practitioners that the 5-second rule, I've heard from so many people in inpatient psychiatric wards, Lewis, that use the 5-second rule in the videos we put on YouTube in their group counseling sessions with people. And knowing that it is helping so many people, it is like the greatest gift on the planet to know that it's making a difference. But I know that in this next chapter that I consciously create, I want to have more fun. I really want to love the process.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it so hard on myself and be gripping everything so tight. And it's really easy for me to see it in other people because I know what it feels like in here. I'm working hard to break the patterns that still hold me back. And the big one that holds me back is bulldozing. It's literally when I start to feel any level of tension. This is particularly true in my marriage. I'm married to a saint. Thank God Chris Robbins meditates every morning. It's the only reason why we've lasted 26 years. It's how he puts up with me. When I feel my emotion rise, I immediately raise my voice.
Wow.
It's how I assert power in the relationship. And I am so committed, Lewis, to breaking that pattern.
Wow.
And being a more fun person to be around and a kinder person to be around.
Wow. That's beautiful that you're getting this during the pause. What do you think was the biggest lesson you learned about yourself during the talk show experience before the pause? Because you covered so many topics and you had to research about so many things, and you brought so many people on, experts, but then just everyday people going through their challenges. What's the thing that you learned that was new? Because this is something you've been studying for years and talking about. And was there anything new that you were like shocked about? You learned about yourself or about human behavior?
This is going to be first of all, there's two things. The first one, I'll make it deeply personal. And the second one will be a thing that I learned.
Okay.
The talk show experience was almost like, it's weird. It almost feels like it didn't happen.
Really?
Yeah.
It was your whole life for like 2 years.
Yeah. But 175 shows, it was super intense. It was almost a spiritual experience because I had dreamt about it for as long as I could remember. And I stepped onto that talk show set with such a level of mastery. And the reason why I had a level of mastery is because I could look backwards at my life and see that I had been heading to that moment for my entire life. That the ability to create trust and take a complicated amount of information and get down to the human connection immediately. That began back in 1994 when I was a legal aid attorney doing criminal defense work in New York City. My ability to understand what victims of domestic violence go through goes all the way back to 1986 through 1988 when I was a crisis intervention counselor volunteering on a domestic violence hotline.
Wow.
My ability to read a teleprompter had to do with being at CNN. My ability to work 18-hour days was a function of the reality TV show world. My ability to relate to somebody who had lost everything was a function of what Chris and I had gone through. My ability, like just everything all of a sudden was like, and it's why I can say with such urgency that you have to have faith that this is happening for a reason, that this is leading somewhere. And if you only just stay awake and you pay attention to what your body's trying to tell you in those moments when you have a signal come up. Like I think right now, aren't you so happy you're a digital entrepreneur?
I've been speaking about building an online business for over a decade. And so now I'm like, oh, I know what to do. And everyone's coming to me for the solutions. And our team is digital, so we are virtual, so we know how to run everything. And we do Zoom meetings every week already.
Yes. And so I literally, when I think back 3 years ago where I was like saw one of your videos or Gary's videos or somebody, I'm like, oh, I just need to start filming the book lines at these. And it was a moment. It was this little amount of wisdom inside of me that I listened to. And I am telling you, that is the power. You got to tune out the noise and you got to learn how to make what I call a quiet decision.
Yeah.
A quiet decision where you shh, and you hear what your heart is urging you to do. And so I sit here because aside from the talk show ending and the book getting canceled, I was literally like, okay, so online courses, we do Zoom, we've got this amazing social media platform, we'll figure it out. And luckily I was like a squirrel with a nut and I put a lot of money away because I was not going to make the same mistake twice.
Smart. Yeah. And you've been doing a lot of research and you've been diving in and making sure you make the right decisions. We've been texting and chatting about different stuff. And
so the biggest insight though, is we did a show that had I can't believe I can't remember the gentleman's name. He's from Washington D.C. and it was a show about heroin and heroin addiction or the opioid addiction and heroin and how this has been an epidemic in the Black community for 20 years. And it only became a big national story because opioid addiction got linked to heroin abuse and it became a white problem. And so he came on the show with 3 former addicts. It was the most profound show that I have ever done because I learned something that I never even understood as a public defender. And that is living in poverty and living with systematic racism creates trauma. And when people experience trauma in their bodies and in their nervous systems, your response, particularly if you have no resources or treatment, and the vast majority of us do not get treatment for the trauma that we experience, most of us want to numb it. And he connected the dots between the chronic trauma that the folks that he was serving had experienced growing up in extreme poverty, around violence, dealing with racism and bigotry and violence, and the natural inclination to reach for something to help you numb that pain. And he connected the dots between deep emotional trauma and addictions that result in a way that I had never heard anybody explain so eloquently. And it was such an eye-opening experience. You're 3 years in.
Yeah.
You've burned through the money.
Yes.
You have been told no by everybody. And even though you have leveraged all of the steps that were ordered along the way and like an amazing Denny's waitress. You can talk to anybody. You can hustle. You can figure it out.
Yeah.
You have nothing but closed doors in front of you
Yes.
and a ton of product and no money.
Yes.
What is the turning point?
Yes.
Why did you not give up?
Yeah. So 2 big things happened. The first was in the form of a crazy painful rejection. So I thought, Mel, so we got a call from a big potential investor
Okay.
and very famous for launching all these sort of unknown brands and making them big products we all buy in grocery stores. And, and I thought, and they gotten a hold of our product. And I thought like, oh, if they invest, then A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. B, like we can leverage their clout to get in these stores that keep telling me no.
Yeah.
Like I had this whole scenario planned out that was like this Pretty Woman moment, right? Where I was like, oh, he's going to save the day. And so we started taking meeting after meeting, it got down to the final meeting with this huge investment firm. And it was in person. My husband and I actually flew to the meeting, and the head guy was about 3 feet from me.
Yeah.
And his whole team was there, who was awesome. I had just presented our whole future product pipeline. And he says, you should be so proud of this product you've created. It's really, really good. But it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in cosmetics. And I was like, okay, can you tell me why? Because I'm so used to hearing no. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, even though really I was devastated, but
Well, yeah, because they just led you on and you just went through it. And this was supposed to be the meeting where they're like, let's do this.
and I was so hopeful and I was so desperate.
Yeah.
And he got very quiet and he says to me, do you want to know, I said, can you tell me why? And he says to me, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I said, yes, please. And he got really quiet and he's like 3 feet from me in person. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And when he said that to me, and this is why it was such a big moment for me, when he said that to me, first of all, a lifetime of body doubt and self-doubt. Like I remember it flooding my body all at once. And when I looked at him, I actually felt no anger toward him. I felt like I was almost like staring my own fear straight in the eye. But when he said those words to me, Mel, and this is when we talk about purpose and intuition, he said, I just don't think women will buy makeup for someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. The second he said that, I felt this feeling in my gut. Like I can remember it like it was yesterday, this like strong feeling that said, he's wrong. Like I felt it, right? And I didn't know how I was going to prove it, but I felt that feeling. And what I realized later when I look back at that moment, this dude gave me a no, but God gave me a knowing in that moment, And I believe every one of us has had someone tell us we're not the right fit or no, or you don't have what it takes. Sometimes we're the ones telling ourselves that.
I don't love you anymore.
Yes, right? But if you get still and you learn to hear your knowing, I believe which one you listen to. If you listen to the no, all the no's, all the rejections, all the self-doubt, or you get still and listen to your knowing, whether that's from your own intuition, from your creator, from the universe, whatever speaks to you, but we all have it. We all have it. And I believe our life and our purpose and and our entire destiny comes down to which one we listen to. Do you listen to the no or do you listen to the knowing?
Okay, I promised a masterclass. That right there is worth $1 billion. In life, are you going to listen to the no, or are you going to listen to the knowing inside of you? That's it.
Yeah.
As somebody who loves you and as your friend, when you shared that story with me and hearing you tell it again right now, I literally go, I'm gonna kill that motherfucker. I go, I have that, my knowing goes, oh yeah? Oh yeah? You think, okay,
Yeah.
okay, let me show you. Like it's that, like I get that sort of mojo thing going when somebody says no like that at a moment like that. It's like, I'll show you.
Yeah.
And I guess I just got in this moment, sort of this wake up call that my knowing often feels like, I'll show you.
Yeah.
You missed out. You'll be sorry. What does yours sound like?
And it's almost always true. That's almost always true, right?
What does yours sound
So,
like? So is yours
yep.
like, Or is it more of like,
I mean, in that case, I was devastated and at the same time had this strong, it was just a peace. Honestly, in that moment, it was a peace. He's wrong. And that didn't make sense in my head. Why? Because I had had 3 years of hundreds of rejections. And this is the thing, right? Jay-Z says the genius thing we did was we didn't give up. That's like one of my favorite quotes of his. In that moment, everything told me to give up, Mel. I mean, it was hundreds of rejections. And now what felt like my last hope of desperation told me something totally different. No, because not only do I not believe in anything you're doing necessarily, but I actually just think you're personally not the right fit. Like women just won't buy makeup from. It was just like, oh my gosh, it was like all of these no's everywhere. And I want to share that because it's easy for someone to go, oh, wow, she built $1 billion company. She must have just got lucky. Or maybe she just had so many connections. Or we always think, but really what it comes down to sometimes, in this case, that big moment for me, do you listen to the no's or you listen to the knowing, right?
yeah.
And I made that decision that day to trust the knowing, to trust myself. I kept feeling like I was supposed to keep going. I didn't know how, right? And
What do you do when you don't even know the next step? So you got this kind of, jerk who's like, yeah,
yeah,
they're not going to buy it because of your body type and this, that, and the other thing. You're like,
yeah,
yeah, you're wrong, motherfucker.
yeah.
But what do you do next?
And so the next right step, the next thing that feels right when you can't even see how the
How
heck it's
how
going
do
to
you
work
even
out.
determine what the next right step is?
Yeah, you just get, for me, I just get still. I pray.
Yeah,
You know that.
yeah.
I pray. And but whether for you, listening, it's prayer or it's the universe or your
Mm.
intuition, when you get still, all you can do is try to listen. Right. And try to live that answer, whatever it is, and take that next right step. And I just had this knowing I was supposed to keep going. And even when it didn't make sense. And I remember crying myself to sleep. I remember writing in my journal, know your why, then fly, girl, fly. And
Mm.
I read those words every day till I didn't need the reminder. I would Google stories of people that had gone through thousands of rejections who no one would know that they went through them because they're so successful today. And I just kept trying to sort of build this toolbox of things I could lean on.
And how did QVC come about?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
you built It Cosmetics and it became, because of you, the most successful beauty brand on all of QVC. You did over
Yeah.
1,000 appearances.
Yeah.
So how did you even get onto QVC? Because that in and of itself is no small feat.
Yeah, well, their head guy of beauty, who's like a legend, had said no to me many times. No, you're not the right fit. And I happened to be at this big beauty expo
And was this before or after this guy was like, no, we're not investing?
after.
After?
After,
So she has now gotten 3 years of no's.
yeah.
They're almost out of money. Her intuition is knowing that she's going to fly, girl, fly. So she is still showing up to a beauty expo
Yeah.
where I want you to understand, in the business world, it's like going to a convention where everybody that you have ever fooled around with, who has then broken up with you, is attending. So everybody that has said no to
Yes.
her,
Yes.
she walks in and it's like, oh, here's this chick again, the it chick, right?
Yep.
The
Yep.
it cosmetics person that has been sending me the stuff and calling me, and we have told her no, do not make eye contact. So you are
I
now
love
at this thing.
This describes it exactly. Everyone you
Yes.
fooled around with who broke up with you and they're like, oh, don't make eye contact.
Yeah. Oh
It's
God,
that.
this chick again with the skin, with the okay.
Yep.
So you're at this thing. You've been
Yes.
told no by the big person. It's been 3 years. So we're talking like 2011, 2012-ish. What do you do?
So you get this 3-foot table, right? It's a huge convention. There's 6,000 women at this convention.
Wow.
They're walking up and down, and it's every beauty brand in the world.
Are they
and
buying it for their stores or?
No, so what it is, it was this big cosmetic executive women awards show.
Okay.
And why you're there is you get a 3-foot table, you're demonstrating your product. You're hoping that someone who walks by either wants to carry your product in their stores or all the press is there. They
Right.
cover your product, or there's also, you can win some big award. So I'm there and then all the brands you can imagine, right, are there. And there's 6,000 women walking. And when I got there, I saw QVC had this huge booth in the background, and you're not allowed to leave your table, right? And I couldn't afford to get kicked out. But I just kept having this feeling like, okay, I've called them a million times. They've told me no forever, but I've never like met anyone in person, right? So I kept trying to sneak away from my table. And every time I got over there, the buyers would be mobbed with people. I eventually got over there, made my way to one of the buyers, introduced myself, poured my heart out. Like I remember sweat just dripping through my clothes because I was freaking out, down to no money.
Yeah.
I'll cut a real long story short, but she gave me her card. And it's like when someone says, "Oh, DM me on Instagram." You don't know if they really
Right.
mean it. Then you're on your Instagram checking your DMs, and you're like, "Oh, they still haven't replied." And I thought, is that what it's going to be like? But she actually meant it. And I flew out, had a meeting with her. We got a yes, my first big yes, for one shot on QVC. And what it meant, Mel, was I was going to get this 10-minute segment live on the air, live in front of 100 million homes. And I either had to sell enough product to hit their sales goal
Yep.
or not come back. We were only doing 1 to 2 orders a day on our website.
Okay.
And
1 to 2 orders a day, everybody.
Yep.
After
Yep.
almost
years.
3 years of
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
This
And
is
barely
like,
keeping the lights on.
and so now you get your shot.
I
Like
get
there are
my
those
shot.
moments in life,
Yes.
you're at bat,
Yep.
and you got to be ready for those.
Yeah.
And so put us right there with you. What happened?
Yeah. What happened was I was about to learn one of the greatest life lessons I've ever learned to this day. And here's what I mean by that. So I found out I get one shot, and then I learn it's consignment, which means so first of all, I had to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer in this 10-minute window to hit their sales goal or not come back, which was about like $130,000 or $140,000 of product in a 10-minute window.
I also want to point out to everybody that's 10 years of sales on her website at the current amount.
Yeah.
So in 10 minutes, everybody,
Yeah.
she on live television
Yeah.
has to move 10 years worth of volume she was selling on her website at that time.
In one shot. Like
In one shot. And she'd never done this before. I realize you were a television anchor, but this is a totally different thing.
Well, QVC, it's unlike stores where you can walk in and there's thousands of products in one space. Their 1 minute of airtime can get one product. So you're competing with the volume of like Apple iPhone or Dyson vacuum. You have to hit these high sales goals.
Yeah.
And what I quickly learned was the offer was consignment, which meant I wasn't guaranteed to be paid for it. I had to figure out how to get a loan to cover the cost of manufacturing 6,000 units of product, shipping it in, going through legal, going through QC, going through all of it. And then I learned if I go on air and it doesn't sell, I have to take it all back
Oh my God.
and therefore go out of business, right? So you should never, ever, ever accept a purchase order you can't afford to lose, ever. But at this point, it was like, I don't know what
This
else
is
to
it.
do. This
This
is
is
it.
the shot.
This is it. And so here's what happened. We went to 22 banks that all said no, and they probably should have. The 23rd bank, which was California Bank and Trust, and gave us a loan that covered our very first purchase order and a little bit more. So I took the little bit more. We hired third-party consultants. I'm like, I'm going all in. I want to do the best 10 minutes I
Yeah.
could possibly do. I want to have no regrets. And they all told me the same thing,
Which is?
which is if you want a chance at making it, here's what you need to do. You need to use this type of model to demonstrate your product, which is flawless skin, early 20s, all the same skin tone. And I'm like, okay, but that's inauthentic. That's not why I'm building this brand. I'm like, what if I put models in their 70s and then and someone with hyperpigmentation and someone with acne and what if I take my own makeup off on national TV and I could prove live how the product works? And they were mortified. And here's the thing, Mel, they wanted me to win. Like they were giving me the best advice that they know how. And
This had never been done. So is this 2011?
This is 2010. Yeah,
So
end of
2010, everybody.
Mhm.
So this was not something people did. Like
Yeah.
we're talking about the person who changed the industry.
Mm.
right here, and this is the moment you're hearing it. And everybody that were the quote experts
Yeah.
were saying no. And this goes back to one of the major takeaways that you were learning from our professor of purpose, Jamie Kern Lima. And that is there's a huge difference between a no and a knowing.
Yeah.
And if
Huge.
you're the only you that will ever exist, your knowing is the unique difference that you're going to make in this world. And in
Yes.
this moment, with one shot to go, everything on the line, a loan from one out of 23 banks that was willing, she said, no way to the fricking experts. And she listened to her knowing. So when you walked into QVC with normal human beings, no flawless
Yeah.
models, no one with perfect skin, all
Yeah.
ages, all body types.
Yep. Yep.
Did people say, wait, you can't take them on the air? Or was there any, like, were people like, oh, she's got, this is just going to be terrible? Like, what was that like when you walked in? Did they even know you were going to take your makeup off?
I let them know I wanted to. And QVC was great. Here's the thing about QVC is like they want everyone to be their authentic selves. It's just
Yep.
this has never been done this way before.
Okay.
And I wish I could say it was easy for me to just go, I'm just going to go with my knowing. But the truth is, I flew out there a week early, Mel. I sat in a rental car in the parking lot, cried every day. I actually second guessed myself. I'm like, if I do it, maybe I'll do it their way first. Then I'll make money. Then I'll do it my way. Uh, but I know that, authenticity, you can't fake authenticity. And authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success. But what I do know is inauthenticity guarantees failure every time.
Okay, everybody stop. The professor class is in session. Did you hear that? That inauthenticity, being fake, trying to do something everybody else's way, because that's just, you're too insecure to do it your way,
Yeah.
that never guarantees success.
Yeah.
Authenticity, your knowing, your special spin on things.
Yeah.
That is the pathway to purpose and success.
Yeah.
There is no other way.
Yep.
And so after a week of crying in your rental car in the parking lot at QVC, you were like, I'm going with the knowing.
I'm going with the knowing.
And so tell us about that first appearance. You're standing there on a television set. There's
Yep.
a bazillion cameras. The lights are bright.
Yeah.
You got your models there.
Yeah.
You're taking the risk of your lifetime on live television in front of 100 million homes.
Yes.
You are doing something that has never been done on television before.
Yeah, I remember literally I wore 2 pairs of Spanx, Mel, not because I cared how I looked, but, like, I was so freaked out, like, my hands were shaking and I was sweating through my clothes, so I had on double Spanx under my dress, and I remember the moment the camera went live, right? And there's a big countdown clock on the floor that started at 10 minutes, and by the way, a minute or 2 before I went onto the set, I learned you're not guaranteed your 10 minutes.
Why?
If you are a minute or 2 into your cell and you're not hitting numbers, they know by the second. Your clock, you might think you have 8 minutes still to go, and your clock will jump to 1 or jump to 2 minutes left.
Because
Yeah.
your product's a flop.
Yep, exactly.
And you're a flop.
And-
So you literally are racing against the clock to be successful out of the gate. So what did you do to like hook everybody? Did you take your makeup off right away? Did you like, what did you
Yeah.
do?
So I first of all, I go out of the, I go live. I remember it was like 9:59, 9:58, 9, and I'm like, and I remember I had practiced in my bathroom mirror, right? So many times. If I had known the high five habit then, I would have been way more confident. But I was practicing in the bathroom mirror this demonstration 1,000,000 times on my wrist, how our concealer doesn't crease and the best 2 selling concealers crease. And I'd done this demonstration like this where I show it and they all start to crease. So I'm holding my wrist up, trying to do this as we go live to show that, but my hand's like this now. And it was never like shaking when I was doing it a million
Meaning
times.
it wouldn't bend, everybody. Like she
Yeah.
was so
So
anxiety ridden that she's
Yes.
sweating through her 2 pairs of Spanx
Yes.
and her wrist will not bend, so she cannot demonstrate that her product won't crease.
Yes, and the host grabbed my wrist and was like, "Thank you, sugar," and she took over. And then I remember my bright red bare face before shot coming up on national television. I remember walking over to our models, real women, all shapes, sizes, skin tones, skin challenges, calling them beautiful, meaning it. I remember,
Did you take, so when did you take your makeup off? When she
so
grabbed your hand and said, "Thank you, sugar,"
yeah,
did that
she's
wake
so
you up
sweet.
or were you like,
Mel, I was like out of my body. I was
so
just
did you
praying.
like just then take your makeup off?
Well, they did a whole bare face before shot of me for that show.
Oh,
I've taken it off live a million times
okay.
since. That
Okay.
first show, it was like, yeah, bare face before shot and then the after. And I remember walking over to them. I remember we were, gosh, 6 or 7 minutes in. I didn't know how we were doing, but I knew we weren't cut yet. And then it got down to like a minute left, and the host said, the deep shade's almost gone, the tan shade's almost sold out. And I was like, freaking out. And I remember literally right at the 10-minute mark, this giant sold out sign came up across the screen, and I start crying on national television.
Oh, I love
They
you.
cut from me and went to like Dyson vacuum or something. And I remember my husband came rushing through the double doors of the studio, and and he's like has his arms up, and I'm just sobbing, and I'm like, real women have spoken, and I'm just like crying, and I thought he was gonna give me a hug or be all excited, and he just looked at me and he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And I was like, "Ah!" And I just, that one airing, which was September of 2010, became 5 more that year, then 101 the next year. And then I did 250 live shows a year myself, direct live on QVC year after year. So we built the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And the only reason that I share that is because it was years of no, and you're not the right fit. And what I love for anyone listening who needs to hear this is no one can tell you you're not the right fit. No one. And you can get all the no's in the world, but you have your knowing. And by the way, I believe this, Mel. I believe even when you trust your knowing and then it seems like it was wrong and things don't go your way over and over and over. Like I look back at those moments, right? I really wanted that investor to invest in us. Thank God he didn't.
Oh
When
my
I
God.
say everything's happening for us, what I mean is like, I was so desperate that if he would have invested in us then, I probably would have given him the majority of the company for probably
Right.
almost no money,
Right.
right? By the time, many years, 6 years later, after that day, 6 years later, when L'Oreal bought this little company I started in my living room for $1.2 billion cash, it was still, I was the largest shareholder. Paulo and I were largest shareholders. And I look back and it's like, oh gosh, thank God the all the no's happened when they did, even when they sucked, even when it felt like it wasn't fair.
Mm.
And I can look at that in many scenarios. Sometimes we don't have some big positive outcome, but we learn a purpose through a no,
Right.
right? We learn a calling through a no. We learn a lesson. We build strength. We build resiliency. We appreciate the beautiful moments so much more when we've gone through the tough ones.
So, have you ever seen that investor since?
I have not seen him. The day that
Of
we
course, I asked the petty question. I'm like, have you ever like seen him to like twist the little knife in there?
t-
Okay.
I heard from him one time ever
Mm-hmm.
again, and it was 6 years later, the day that L'Oreal announced the deal. So because they're a public company, they announced, that they had acquired It Cosmetics, made me the first woman to hold a CEO title of a brand in their 107-year history. They did the big press release. So
That's kind of surprising. 107 years, L'Oreal, a makeup company. It took them that long to have the first female CEO of a brand.
I hope they have many more now. That is my prayer.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you were the trailblazer there too.
It's been, yeah, so many things. It's been a journey. And here's the thing, Mel, it was another woman inside L'Oreal. It was Carol Hamilton, who was head of luxury for North America. She'd been there, gosh, 30 plus years, and she championed for me
Mm,
to keep my CEO title, all the things. Like it was another woman saying, "Oh," and it's funny because I actually think she should have been the first woman. You know what I mean? And I think
mm-hmm.
again, there's an example, by the way, of I believe, I'm not going to speak for her. I believe she knows. This is my opinion. I think she probably knows she should be the first female CEO. But look how she used what she went through to then, boom, be of purpose and of service and help make sure that I kept my CEO title. Everything we go through. But so they announced it, right? So all of a sudden it was homepage of Wall Street Journal, the press everywhere. And that was the first time and only time since that I heard from that potential investor.
And what did he say?
He said, congratulations on the L'Oreal deal. I was wrong. is what he said, and wished me the best of luck. And
That's a big
so
deal to admit you're wrong.
it is. And so when you speak about petty, so what I did say to him was thank you. But what I wanted to say, like,
What did you want to say?
so in that moment, here's what I thought about. I thought about, do you remember the movie Pretty Woman where like she goes in the store and they wouldn't help her, and then she goes back? Remember when she goes back?
Yes.
So I wanted to say to him, big mistake, huge, huge. I could give you 1.2 billion reasons why it was a huge mistake. But I didn't. I wouldn't have wanted to be him in that situation. You know, we probably would have been one of the most successful investments in his firm's history, you know? And so, listen, it wasn't I always say rejection is God's protection so often, you
There's
know?
another one, everybody. Rejection is God's protection.
Yeah.
It's a good way to frame it. And I think when you look in the rearview mirror, you know that all the rejections you've faced, especially in relationships, were there to
Mm,
protect you. I think the true thing that you've taught me through your story and through the example that you continue to set, Jamie, is that true power and grace and grit and belief is about seeing that in front of you,
mm,
not behind you.
mm.
That the rejections that you're facing right now, that you can look ahead and realize it's protecting you in this moment. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.